Post-Offseason.
Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
It's going good, man. Today we have some excellent content on the docket. Bro, TV.
Yeah,
Today is one of those days where we got a couple of funny things to go through, bro.
yeah, 100%. And man, the content is starting to go up. If you guys haven't been checking out the TikToks and Instagrams, we've been starting some new series, including myself. The Hit Your Free Throws NBA Universe, NBA 2K Universe has started, and we are releasing episodes every day. We released episode 1. The first regular season is up, and by the time you watch this video, episode 2 might be up, where you get to see the champion of season 1. So be on the lookout for that, all that good stuff. We have all the content going on, and of course, we have an excellent episode up for you today. Not much NBA news, but we definitely have a lot of things to discuss on today's episode, including our next top 5, which is the top 5 small forwards, which we looked at the list already, man. This is gonna get a little dicey. Let's see. We're gonna
Yeah.
be definitely one where the orders are definitely gonna be a little bit different than what we usually have. But before we get into the episode, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our personal accounts at KnockdownJ, at TV on Basketball, down in the description below. All of the links can be found there. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, remember to follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. And I'm telling you right now, they are daily now, so be on the lookout for that.
Yes, sir.
If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. We're going to be, of course, releasing weekly episodes, but as we talked about in the past, you might be in for some extra content over this summer and over the next few months. So be on the lookout for that too, because we're going to have definitely some YouTube exclusives. And of course, if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify and Apple, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Let's get into it, bro. Not like you said, not a lot of news, but we got some interesting stuff to pull out today.
100%. And we are starting off with a topic that we don't go into that much. ESPN, now that the NBA offseason, most of the moves are done, some of the rosters are basically being set, have released a post-offseason NBA power rankings. And this is including like all the moves that each of these teams made and everything. So we have a pretty interesting list. If you guys want to have a little preview of it, I'm going to list you the top 5. You got the Denver Nuggets, NBA champs at number 1, Milwaukee Bucks at number 2, Boston at number 3, Phoenix at number 4, and the Eastern Conference champions, Miami Heat, at number 5. But man, this list, I don't know, it's a little bit dicey. Even though we know what all the offseason moves are, it does get a little bit dicey. Jay, when you look at this list, what is one thing that absolutely sticks out to you?
I think one of the biggest things that was notable to me actually was the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies are still rounding out the top 10. They're at number 10. And that was one of the things that kind of stood out because Memphis didn't really do much and they watched a lot more talent go out the door than I think many people are willing to give credit. Somehow, despite how good and effective this guy was as a backup point guard, I think it kind of got lost in the fray that Tyus Jones was moved in the whole Kristaps Porzingis Marcus Smart exchange. That's
Yeah.
a very notable thing to pair with the fact that they also have to replace Dylan Brooks. They're essentially trying to do a 2-for-1 in the form of Marcus Smart. You're trying to replace both the defense and the ability to run an offense through Marcus Smart in terms of replacing both Dylan Brooks and Tyus Jones, as I mentioned beforehand. You pair that with the fact that they're going to be in a 25-game hole, not necessarily in terms of like, oh, they're not going to be a good team in that time frame, but they're going to be in a 25-game stretch without Ja Morant. So I think that the most interesting part about it is I think that shows faith in the play style that Taylor Jenkins runs, the depth that Taylor Jenkins relies on, and the overall skill across the board in terms of the flexibility they still have on the roster with Desmond Bane, newly paid Desmond Bane, by the way.
Yeah.
Jaren Jackson Jr., getting back a healthy Steven Adams. There's still a lot of decent depth on this team, and we've seen them perform in stretches without Ja Morant before. I think them still rounding out the top 10 ahead of teams like the Clippers, the Kings, the Mavericks, them still being that high up shows that that depth really meant something coming out of this offseason for a lot of these people ranking for ESPN.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, when I was looking at this list too, I did have them as one of the things, as one of like my biggest takeaways. Not because of how high they are, because I think they should still be higher. I still think that,
Oh, okay.
and it's more because of what they have shown us in the past when John Morant's out the lineup. I mean, this isn't new. John Morant has been out due to, I mean, last year, of course, due to suspension. They had some nagging injuries over like a couple years ago. Same thing as last year. But what they have shown us is that even without John Morant in the lineup, it's just plug and play over there in Memphis. They have a system there and that works out for everyone. When John Morant goes out, we've seen Jaren Jackson like rise up to like 25, 27 points per game when asked to. Sure, losing Dylan Brooks, I know he's like a big joke here in the NBA, but man, he was important to that team. Tyus Jones was important to that team. But what did they get in return? They got Marcus Smart. They have honestly, one of the, now that he's like on this team, probably one of the best backup point guards in the entire league, if not the best backup point guard. You're looking at this team, again, you mentioned a returning Steven Adams, a year better Jaren Jackson Jr. You have players over there in Desmond Bain who have shown that they can step up in big moments. I honestly think, especially with this team led by Taylor Jenkins and with like basically like the same roster minus Dylan Brooks and Tyus Jones, like still being the same, the continuity factor is a big thing with this team. And as the more years they get together, the more they just grow stronger. Even though John Morant is not playing for the first 25 games, let's be honest, they knew this was coming. They knew, and Taylor Jenkins is going to have a plan in place for training camp and for the early parts of the season. And I still think they're going to be very, very effective. They're very good on defensive end. They know how to run the court, and their offense. Sure, their shooting has a lot to be denied, to be desired. They still have like some pretty like elite shooters over there. I think they have a really strong roster and stuff like that. But man, the Memphis Grizzlies, honestly looking at this list, we have the Cavs at number 9, the Warriors at number 8. Low key, I can make the argument I could put them over those two and maybe the Lakers, just because I just love the whole continuity aspect of this team. And it's 25 games. John Morant is a top 5 point guard, as we've talked about in the past when coming into the season. You add him back in the mix, the sky's the limits for this team. They're still hella young.
Yeah, I definitely think that Memphis has a lot in front of them. I think the 25 games might actually be a big anchor to why they're as low as they are. I think you make a really good case that if John Morant were playing, there might be an actual change to how high they are, where maybe people would feel that much more confident about them because of the fact that Marcus Smart does fill such a significant role for them while also bringing a certain level of culture and stability that they desperately need. And I think that is something we've talked about on plenty of podcasts in the past, of just them between Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose just being real locker room tone setters. That's one of the big, like the big homie syndrome, right? That a lot of people talk about in the NBA, where a lot of teams, this is how the Houston Rockets, who I'll transition to my take on them in a second. That's why the Houston Rockets have taken such a sharp approach now to bringing in so many veterans over this past offseason, is for the idea of being able to take that next step of, we know Memphis is good. We know that they're talented. We know that the young talent is going to be there for a long time because of the way everybody's contracts are lined up. Now it's the idea of being in the mindset to truly play championship basketball. We know that Memphis is scrappy. We know that they're good enough to hang it with any team. But now they need to be mentally strong enough to be able to hang with some of the top teams in the Western Conference and in the NBA in general. I think that there's a lot to like about them. And that's kind of what brings me to Houston, though, TV. Houston is all the way down at 24. And I think that's hilarious, not because I think they necessarily should be any higher, but I think it goes to show you how little this offseason really swayed anybody's belief in the Houston Rockets. They bring in Ime Udoka, they bring in Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks. We saw Jabari Smith absolutely lose his mind in Summer League. We love Tari Eason, of course. Jalen Green is set to be on a really good, trajectory as well. They've got Amin Thompson that played relatively well. Granted, he wasn't active in summer league for long due to injury, but he's still somebody that I think could be a really good backcourt mate with Jalen Green. There's a lot to like. I didn't even bring up Alperen Sengun in this whole little thing that I got going on. There's a lot to like about Houston, but if you go through the list based off these rankings, people believe, or at least I'll say ESPN believes, that Houston is still the third worst team in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you that there's still so much ahead of this Houston Rockets team. But I think that also should be a immense credit to the Western Conference from a competitive standpoint, because there's a ton of teams that are ahead of them that could be toss-ups. Was Sacramento a flash in the pan? Is Oklahoma City only going to get better after having a really strong season last year and now getting Chet Holmgren this season for his first official rookie year? New Orleans is always a wild card because we never know what's going on with Zion. Is Point Anthony Edwards, excuse me, new number 5 Anthony Edwards,
Yeah.
gonna be a different type of demon now that he's coming off of his first All-Star appearance? There's so much to like about the Western Conference at the top end. There's a lot to be intrigued about in the middle, and yet we still find ourselves with some of the more interesting teams in the league being at the bottom. One of them being the Houston Rockets, like I mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, the Houston Rockets, I'm going to get into the team right below them.
Okay.
I'm going to get later after that, after I talk
Yeah.
about the Rockets. But
Yeah.
man, I mean, it does, I guess, like you would expect them to be higher because of the amount of moves that they made. But to be honest, we talked about culture setting with Marcus Smart. This is what these moves are for Fred VanVleet, getting Dylan Brooks. That's what it was for the Houston Rockets, just trying to set a culture. Bringing in Ime Udoka, bringing in these two veterans. They got joked about over the last couple of years for just being an AAU team, just throwing a bunch of like the top college prospects in there and just letting them ball. It felt like Steven Silas had no control of the team, and they just were running just like freelance offense. That's why they kept being near the bottom of the league. Now you got Dylan Brooks. You already know he's gonna set a culture. Fred VanVleet is already like coming from a championship winning system in Toronto, and now you have Ime Udoka, whose last full NBA season made to the NBA Finals. These guys are coming in, maybe not to expect to win right away, but they expect everything to like have a sort of like structure, have some sort of culture, and they're there to set that. And the Houston Rockets, I think when I look at this team right now, I get the same sort of vibes as the OKC Thunder, not maybe last season, but the season prior, where they felt like they were like a year or two away, but now that they brought in some veterans, maybe they like had like enough more continuity together, they're like this close to taking the next step. Will we see that this year? I'm not sure. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains with this team. I feel like Houston's going to be a type of place where we're going to see a lot of reports where there might be some sort of infighting at some point during the season. But I feel like if they can like set a culture there, if Ime Udoka can get control of the locker room, which hasn't felt like the case since the James Harden days, if he can get that like, in tight, you can get good production and good leaps from Jabari Smith and Jalen Green. Houston may surprise some people, and like you mentioned, there's teams at the bottom of this West, like the Utah Jazz. Are they going to repeat some of their success? The Timberwolves, are they going to figure out this whole front court issue? There's a lot of question marks, and there could be a chance with the right jumps for the Houston Rockets that they can potentially make a play in, or they can be in that just position to be competing, because they've been in the tank zone for way too long. And now with this whole CBA thing where they're kind of forced to spend their money instead of hoarding it until like when they see like best fit, now they have to be like, okay, we need to start setting a culture here. We have like so many young guys. Even this past draft, like you mentioned, Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore coming in. These are two top 5 prospects from a few months ago. So they have the talent. We talked about the Houston Rockets in the past. They have talent. They just need the surrounding pieces to be there for them. And I think this is the start of that. There's going to be some growing pains for sure, but I'm excited to see what they're going to do this year, because they're giving me those OKC Thunder vibes from just a couple years ago, where they felt like they were like a step away, like 2 steps away from reaching that next point. But let's look for the team below them, the Toronto Raptors. Bottom 6 team in the league that the ESPN has them at. And I'm telling you right now, as a Raptor fan, I can't even hate this. I really can't hate this. We let Fred VanVleet go for nothing, and our team, just for lack of a better term, they're in limbo. Like, what are we doing? What is this Raptors team doing? I think like out of all the teams, like if you look at like in the NBA, the Raptors team going to next season has still like, is this the lineup they're still gonna put out there? It would be really weird if that was the case. I feel like the Raptors bringing in Dennis Schroeder, bringing in recently Garrett Temple as well, another veteran. It feels like Masai Ujiri still wants to have like some sort of winning culture there, while still trying to trade Pascal Siakam, still not knowing what they're gonna do with OG Anunoby. There's just so many things where being in the middle ground just sucks. Being in the middle ground just sucks, especially as an organization, and they don't know what direction they want to go to. Scotty Barnes is under immense pressure from a lot of people after winning Rookie of the Year. They're expecting a big jump from him. But the Raptors, I think, need to pick a direction. I don't mind being considered the bottom 6 worst team. I just want us to kind of lean into it. There's nothing worse in the NBA than being in the Orlando Magic for those 5-6 years in the past. No one wants to be the Washington Wizards meddling in the middle. No one wants to be that sort of team. And Masai has said that in the past. He said that in interviews. If we're competing, we are going to compete. If we want to take a step back and maybe go, not necessarily he would say the tanking route, but step back and go into a more developmental phase, we should. But being in the middle ground is something that he mentioned in the past that he doesn't want to be in. And look where he is right now. He is. They need to pick a direction. They lost Fred VanVleet for nothing. There's potential where that might be the case for Gary Trent Jr., for OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. And you still have so many question marks going into this season as well, just where you want the team to go. It's a tough space for Toronto Raptor fans, and it's been a while since we've been this low in some sort of power rankings, but to be honest, I can't even hate it.
Yeah, I mean, just the roughest part about this entire offseason is, again, I think one of the biggest things we talked about before the offseason started was, well, your biggest claim for Toronto was pick a lane. That was one of the biggest things that you had asked for coming into this offseason was Toronto, pick a lane. Let us know exactly what direction it is that you want to go in based off the moves you've made. And I don't think they've really indicated anything, if I'm being honest, because like you mentioned beforehand, on one end, they are in talks to want to move off of Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam says that he's not signing any extension with any other team if he is moved from Toronto. So that puts you in a bind. Gary Trent picks up his player option. When initially there was conversations about giving him an extension, he picks up his player option with potential for the extension to still be in conversation, or he just signed up for a wink, wink, nudge, nudge way to get himself traded as an expiring contract. OG Anunoby is the most notable expiring contract on you guys' team and probably one of the top 5 players on an expiring deal to keep an eye on going into this upcoming season. You got finessed by Jakob Poeltl into $20 million a year as a center. He's getting paid the same of the likes of Nikola Vucevic and I think also Kristaps Porzingis. If not, I think Kristaps Porzingis might even be making like $16 million or something.
No, he's making 30. He's making 30.
He's making 30? Oh, it's because of the extension situation. Yeah. So he's making around what Nikola Vucevic and Kristaps Porzingis are making. And I think in a start bench cut, I think you cut Jakob Poeltl pretty quickly of that group, right? In terms of just how different those guys are in caliber. So you get finessed by Jakob Poeltl, and your biggest quote unquote outside free agent signing is Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah.
As the Fred VanVleet replacement. Here's the truth. This is what saves the Toronto Raptors in terms of going into the season. All of this buzz about Scotty Barnes playing the 1, we need to see it. We need to see it. I've been hearing about TV. I actually remember back to my Hoop Talk podcast days before we started really getting in the weeds about these rookies. Somebody that was brought up when we did the NBA pre-draft show was talking about Scotty Barnes potentially being brought up at the point guard position.
Yeah.
This was something that we had talked about way before he even got drafted.
Yeah.
This has been buzz for now what's going to be the 3rd season of that. That's what we need to see. If you're not going to make any shakeups that indicate a rebuild, you want to be competitive, then the thing that's going to bring any kind of newfound hope to Toronto fans is going to be to shake up the lineups and how you go about developing these guys. And the biggest thing that we've heard about and haven't seen much of is Scotty Barnes at the 1. So I want to see it. I want to see Scotty Barnes play the 1, and I want to see what it looks like. I don't want to see a lineup of Dennis Schroeder, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes at the 3, probably Pascal at the 4, Jakob Poeltl at the 5. I don't want to see that. You guys are already shooting the void. That's one of the biggest things. Even when you read the ESPN readout, the very last line says, well, it's actually a pretty decent sentence, but the back end of it is Toronto's pick to replace him, Dennis Schroeder, talking about replacing
Fred VanVleet.
Fred VanVleet, says Toronto's pick to replace him, Dennis Schroeder, is not the same level of player, and the Raptors are going to be even more shooting challenged this year than they were last season. So we know you guys can't shoot, but we know you crashed the glass for as one of the best offensive and defensive rebounding teams in the entire NBA, despite the fact that you guys play smaller than most people. You got Grady Dick in the draft, which is an upgrade in terms of three-point shooting. You understand that defensive versatility wise, you have a lot of versatility. It just has not been able to produce offensively. So what do you need to do? You have to shake it up somehow. Like I said, I think Toronto still has a chance to be a very intriguing team in the Eastern Conference. I believe that 25 in most worlds is actually still a little too low for this team. But they've got to do something to make us believe in them. This offseason didn't create belief, and I think that's why they're in the bottom six.
We've wanted them to make moves for the longest time now. We thought they were going to make a bunch of moves at the trade deadline. That didn't end up happening. And we are now, what is it, August 3, 2023, and we are basically in the same mindset as we were back in February of this year. It's not a great time to be a Raptors fan right now. It's just we just don't know. Like last year, we already had so many of our problems already addressed. We knew what the problems were. We watched every single game as Raptor fans. We go into this season, and it feels like those problems are even worse, and we still have these question marks for so many guys whose contracts are coming up. So, Masai, make a freaking move because we don't want to lose. We already didn't do our due diligence trading Fred VanVleet to trade deadline and got absolutely nothing back. We don't want that to happen with the rest of these teams. Moving on before we get into the next topic, how are you feeling about the Bulls at 22?
Man, the Bulls at 22 it definitely was rough. I find it ironic that we just barely are over the Orlando Magic. I'm just saying, considering the fact that we definitely lost that trade, at least from most Bulls fans' perspectives. But you got to be happy with some of the stuff that we were able to do this offseason. I think getting Javon Carter and Torrey Craig was solid pickups on the margins. Obviously, the Lonzo Ball situation is probably the biggest blow, and I think that to a certain extent outweighs getting Javon Carter and Torrey Craig because I think that Lonzo Ball, we saw it. He created a different dynamic in terms of just our play style overall. I also think that this team has now kind of locked themselves into a certain pocket now with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic, and that's going to be kind of tough to build on. We had a miracle season 2 seasons ago where DeMar DeRozan was one of the best fourth quarter closers in the NBA. Even last season, he was one of the best fourth quarter scorers in the NBA. It just didn't come to fruition the same way we had seen the season before. I think there's a lot to like about the Chicago Bulls team, but I think we just have a ceiling on us as long as we're so eerily dependent on this point guard position. As long as we are stuck in this weird middle ground in terms of not having an elite level point guard to run the show, I think we're always going to have a what if about how good our team can truly be. And that's just unfortunate because we've seen in pockets just how good this team can play when they're up tempo, when the scores just get to be scores, when you have a guy who gets to facilitate, play defense, and just get everybody involved. And unfortunately, I love Javon Carter. I love Alex Caruso on the perimeter, but we're too small and there's still a lot to worry. There's a lot to worry about. And I'm going to say this, and I hate saying this, but because there's a lot of Bulls fans that will not agree with me. This is my last year on the Pat Williams train as well. This is my last season on this Pat Williams train because we've tried this offseason after offseason. Oh, he's working out with DeMar DeRozan. This, that, and third. And we just continue to, instill this level of belief in what Patrick Williams could be. This was once a guy that was on the untouchable list in terms of trade packages. And it's starting to get rough to get behind that for a team that is relatively limited in assets in terms of young talent that we can believe in. And the draft picks that we definitely would have loved to hit on are now in the rearview mirror. So not happy about the Bulls at 22, but am I going to be the one to argue against it? No, unfortunately not.
the sad life of being a Bulls and a Raptors fan. We're just accepting the fact that we're just we're just like
Hey,
we look
man.
and we know that we could be so much more, but we look at number 22 and number 25 respectively and be like, yeah, that's about right. That's a tough spot to be in as both fans of these organizations. But yeah, this list is really interesting. If you guys want to check it out, definitely do. If you have any thoughts on on the teams we discussed, let us know down below. But we're not even moving off the ESPN train just yet. We are going to be talking about the new ESPN play-by-play commentary booth. Of course, over the last 10 or so years, we've gotten used to the voices of Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson. Well, Mike Breen is staying on, but because of this whole new ESPN turnover, we are now having a crew of Mike Breen, Doc Rivers, and Doris Burke. Very, very a big shakeup because we have been used to the 3-man booth, like I mentioned, of course Jackson, Van Gundy, and Breen for the longest time now. But now we are finally getting a shakeup. Jay, how do you feel about this change?
I'm not too excited about it. Love Doris Burke in the booth. Love that they understand that you just can't let go of Mike Breen, right? The Doc Rivers raspy voice is gonna be an interesting one. TV, we talked about this off camera. The Doc Rivers raspy voice for 48 minutes is gonna be a little insane.
Oh, just a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah, that's gonna be a little insane. So there's that as well. Um, at the end of the day, man, I think there's just a shakeup at ESPN that I think we all just don't necessarily understand just yet. And it's gonna take some time to kind of get used to a lot of the corporate stuff that comes with a lot of the things that ESPN and Disney in general are kind of going through right now. So as unfortunate as it is, this is just kind of the direction we're heading in. The prayer TV is that the product on the court outweighs some of these things because you don't come to these games or watch these games for the commentary. Granted, they definitely assist in your experience, but you don't come for the commentary. You
Yeah.
come for the product on the floor. And I do believe that over the last couple of seasons that the NBA has become a much more exciting product to get behind. I think the institution of the play-in tournament has been one of the better things to shake up the league. This year, with them bringing in the new actual in-season tournament, is going to be another new dynamic worth keeping a real eye on. There's a lot to like about where the NBA is headed moving forward, and that you just hope that commentating isn't going to be the real thing that ends up damaging the product that we love and enjoy. So it's going to be interesting to see how things continue to shake out because I feel like this unfortunately also isn't the end of the handful of names that have continued to kind of fall off the map over time. Um yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes, but it's definitely a lot of adjustments.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, we also know that Jalen Rose got let go by ESPN as well. So you were definitely going to see a lot of new faces on the NBA Today show, which they haven't announced with the new crew as well. So we're going to be on the lookout for that. But in terms of this new 3-man booth, I'm gonna be completely honest. The other 3-man booth was getting old on me. It was just getting kind of old. I mean, Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy were at some points kind of a bore, especially Jeff Van Gundy. I mean, the amount of complaining this man does on the air about modern NBA actually just irritates me. But so the change there was fine. Now, do I want to hear Doc Rivers' raspy voice for the 48 minutes instead? We're gonna have to wait and see. But he's been around the game. He's been coaching for the longest time now. Now he's finally transitioning into more of a commentator's role. Maybe he'll provide more insight, especially as a coach of the more modern NBA. Jeff Van Gundy has been out of that space for a while, so maybe he doesn't really understand fully. But Doc Rivers is just coming off a job with the Philadelphia 76ers. He probably has a better understanding, and it might be a bit more of a breath of fresh air sort of thing, knowing how he views the modern NBA. Doris Burke is great. I know some people she has her fans, especially some people say she has a bias towards some of the top players in the league. I think that Doris Burke is still fine. I think a change is good though. Any sort of change, I think it'd be nice to have new voices in the booth. I'm really excited for it. I just don't know how the dynamic's gonna work, but at the end of the day, Mike Breen is there. Mike Breen is there.
Yeah.
He's the main guy. He's the one who's creating all those legendary calls. I'm excited to see that. But yeah, this whole ESPN thing has been like just really, really confusing just because of the amount of turnover there has been in at ESPN so far. This sort of thing is going to require like some sort of like either massive article which is going to come out in the next maybe year or so, or some sort of documentary of what happened to this, because this feels like something like massive happened internally, which is really not going to be talked about in the public space until maybe many years down the line. But I like the changes. I just know that when watching basketball, especially like in the NBA and nationally televised basketball, commentary does matter. It keeps you engaged in the game, and it helps you kind of like keep track. I know you guys are watching it for the product on the court, but commentary does help out with that.
Yeah.
If you notice in the NBA Finals, like I don't know if you've been seeing all the memes and stuff, but when Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy were realizing they had to go to Denver for at least for like 2 or 3 games, the disappointment in their faces that they couldn't like be able to go to LA and stuff. I mean, yes, they do have their biases, so knowing that, it's nice to have a change, but we're gonna have to wait and see. We can't really see like have like our full thoughts until we see them all in the booth together, which is gonna happen in a couple months. But again, excited for this change, and hopefully it's going to be a nice new booth, and hopefully they'll be able to create some really good memories as that old booth did for us probably over the last 10 years. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, just excited to be able to see a transition. And I think that that fresh commentary is something to be open to. So I think you made a really great point about the fact that there's just, it's similar to coaching, right? The idea of just sometimes you need a new voice in the room to reinvigorate things. This might be just the kind of step that we need. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, 100%. And I know I'm saying this completely sarcastically, and I know the NBA community is going to be very appreciative of having a female in the booth. I already know that. Moving on to the next topic. Moving on. We have been doing our top 5 list for the point guards, the shooting guards over the last 2 weeks. We're only going to do this right. We're going to be going on to the small forwards now, our top 5 small forwards coming up. And Jay, I don't know about you, but I feel like there is a clear 5 at this point. I don't know. I talked about this before the show. I feel like there's a clear 5 that both of us are going to have. It's just the order is going to be kind of all over the place.
I hope that you're right, bro. I'm just scared that I'm wild carding hecka crazy. And I promise, I'm letting everybody know ahead of time. My list is not clickbait. I just have some pretty strong beliefs about where I stand on my list. Let's hope our 5 is the same. But if it's not, I'm willing to duke it out and talk about what makes our list so different.
Yeah, 100%. Before we get into this list, who was your one honorable mention that you had?
Chris Middleton.
Actually, before you talk about that, by the way, we are going off the ESPN depth chart.
Oh yeah, that's a great point to throw out.
That's a great point, because last week we had the whole Paul George situation. It's not like a big deal or anything,
Yeah.
but just so we're on the same page in terms of like who we have as our pool of players, we have an ESPN depth chart list like that we were following, and we for sure have all these guys like accounted for. So where should we go with that? But Jay, moving on now, who's your honorable mention?
My single honorable mention is Chris Middleton.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. This past season, injury plagued him. Him getting paid worries me a little bit, but I understand needing to get him locked up. You can't let Chris Middleton. You can't let Chris Middleton or Brooke Lopez walk away for nothing. But I'm worried about Chris Middleton long term. So but I still love him as a player. I love him as a wingman too. Giannis Antetokounmpo. He means a lot to that team on the perimeter. There's still a lot to like about him. It's just still a lot to worry about as well.
Yeah, 100%. I like that pick as your honorable mention. For me, I'm gonna go with Mr. Most Improved Player. Let me go with Lauri Markkanen as my honorable mention. I feel like he is put in a position where he can like really like showcase all of his talents there in Utah last year, and with him being still the number 1 guy going into next season, I expect more of the same. I think that there is again a significant drop off between number 5 and number 6, but I think he is the best of the rest. Give me Lauri Markkanen as my honorable mention. Jay, who do you have at number 5?
I got the big bull, man. I got DeMar DeRozan at 5 in this one. Yeah, this one felt relatively easy, not just because I'm a Bulls fan, so it kind of, evens the pool out a little bit for me to kind of lean with my guy, but also, I mentioned this earlier. DeMar DeRozan for the last 2 to 3 seasons has been one of the best fourth quarter scorers in the entire NBA. It's been one of the most effective traits that he's had as an aging player that relies on the mid range as his main mode of being able to create offense for himself. And he's one of those guys that I think still can be a very solid 2 or 3 option on a championship caliber team. I understand that Chicago might not be necessarily optimized for him to really play championship level basketball anymore. And that's unfortunate. But I think, for example, if DeMar DeRozan was a guy on the trade block right now, I think he would be an interesting guy with a lot of really interesting suitors amongst championship caliber teams because he provides an ability to close games with a guy who can get his own basket. He gives you the ability to play a different type of way because when you need to slow the game down, he's effective in that. You think about the way the NBA has been going, all the 3-point shooting, all the high tempo offense. He gives you an opportunity, especially in the postseason, where when things slow down and you have to be able to play within a more reformed system, he can play within that environment and play at a high level. I think there's a lot to like about DeMar DeRozan, and I think it's just unfortunate that we haven't really been able to see him shine on the proper stage in quite some time because I don't genuinely count our playoff season against the Milwaukee Bucks as a great showing for him just because I think that was easily the worst matchup that our team could have had in the postseason. I made an entire TikTok about how hilarious it was that we had one of the best years we've had in a while just to run into easily the worst possible outcome
Matchup.
in the
Yeah.
postseason. That was a big part of why that year we weren't able to capitalize off of that year as much as one would have hoped. But I think under the right circumstances, DeMar DeRozan can still be a top 2, top 3 option and play for a championship. So I gotta keep him in my top 5.
Yeah, 100%. I also have him at number 5. That's what I was kind of like hoping that we'd both go to. The ultimate hit your free throws player, former Raptor, current Chicago Bull, the
Yes,
ultimate
sir.
hit your free throws player.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, no, DeMar DeRozan, personally one of my favorite players of all time. This guy is just, no matter how much the league is progressing, you need guys like DeMar DeRozan on your team. You need players like him in your league. He slowed things down. One of the best post players at the forward position, especially at the 3. His mid-range shot is lethal. His ability to get to the free throw line is near unmatched in this league, definitely top in the league. And he just provides just like a whole other dimension to any team who, like, if he like wants, like you mentioned, if he were to get traded, put him on any team, he gives them another dimension to their offense because not only can he create his own shot, but he has proven ever since he's left Toronto that he has become a better playmaker, a decent rebounder. He knows how to be in those right spots, and you've watched him like a lot over these last couple years. Like, it feels like whenever he goes up for that shot in the mid range, it's automatic. And you don't get many players like that in the league anymore. I mean, you'll probably get it with him and who's probably the best mid range shooter next to him, like Chris Paul. Like, those are the two guys where you're like, you watch them and you like, every time go up for the mid range shot, you feel like it's automatic. He's just put again in a tough situation there in Chicago. Move him, like, have Lonzo Ball on that team, a true point guard there. We've seen how good the Chicago Bulls team can be, and how much he flourishes. I mean, when you look at the 21-22 season, even though we didn't have the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, we've talked to each other on each other's pods of how like DeMar DeRozan is probably like a top 10 MVP candidate for like during that season. So we know that he could still be good. And what's great about him is that even though he's 33 years old at the moment, his game, it will age like fine wine because you're not gonna be able to take away that mid-range jumper from him. Like, he plays at such a pace that he could still like score like 20 plus points by the age of like 35, 36. I find that very valuable, and I think that eventually, if he does move on, I think that he could still be like a good, maybe not second option, maybe third or fourth option on a championship level team. But I still think he can provide great value to anyone, to any team in this league. Give me DeMar DeRozan at my 5 as well. Jay, moving on to number 4.
TV, I got Kawhi here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Okay.
Me having Kawhi at 4, I think that we're getting to the point where we're resting on the laurels of who Kawhi Leonard was and not who he's been as of late. And I hate to also play the "what have you done for me lately" card, but I think people play the legacy card with Kawhi Leonard
Too,
equally, if not
too
more
much.
exactly. And so, with that being the case, I have Kawhi Leonard at 4 because this is a guy who, especially since getting to the LA Clippers, has not accomplished nearly as much as we would have anticipated. If everybody remembers, I made a TikTok at the beginning of last season that said I thought that based on depth alone, the LA Clippers were a top 3 team in the entire NBA. That did not come to fruition. Now, granted, due to injury concerns, both related to Kawhi Leonard and also Paul George, but this team is consistently underachieved. Like that is at the end of the day the main thing. And Kawhi Leonard has a lot to do with that because availability sometimes really is the best ability, right? And I think that Kawhi Leonard is still one of the best two-way defenders in the NBA. Granted, Luka Doncic has made Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's whole best two-way players in the league situation look a lot more dicey than people have been giving it credit because Luka Doncic has had his way with the Clippers in a lot of different scenarios. There's
Hooked
none
up.
Yeah, nonetheless, he's still one of the best two-way players in the NBA. He's still one of the most versatile players in terms of his ability to guard and what he's able to do offensively. And he's still one of the top 5 to 10 guys I would want to take in a foxhole if you told me I needed a basket or a handful of baskets to close a game in the final 2 to 3 minutes of a big-time playoff series. Kawhi Leonard is definitely in that grouping. But unfortunately, Kawhi Leonard, Zion Williamson, these are the kind of guys that you get to a point where you say, well, damn, can we just see it? Can we just see it and see it consistently? Because we know who you are. We believe in what it is that you represent. But if we're running out of the sample, we're starting to run low on what the current sample size to work with is under these assumptions of who we know you are capable of being. And so that hurts Kawhi Leonard in his rankings because for the last 2 to 3 seasons, you played just barely over 50 games.
Yeah, yeah. Surprisingly enough, I also have Kawhi at number 4. And
Wow.
this,
Okay. That's
no,
okay.
here's
Cool.
here's the
Cool.
thing. Here's the thing, though. I told you pre-pod, I had a list, and I'm not gonna lie. I put Kawhi at 2. I
Ooh,
put Kawhi at
okay. I
2,
understand.
but then I was really thinking about it. I'm like, I don't want to play again the recency card. But this is more than just recency with him. He hasn't finished the 2021 playoffs. He didn't play all of 2022, and he couldn't finish the playoffs in 2023. That's a pretty damn big sample size for a guy. And we know who Kawhi Leonard is. Again, we talked about some of the best mid-range jumpers in the league. Kawhi Leonard's jump shot just feels automatic for mid-range as well. Like he is considered one of the best defenders in the league, the best defenders of our generation. We know that when he is at his best, he can backpack a team all the way to the promised land. We've seen him do that, but that was 5 years ago, and
Thank
we,
you.
and we cannot be holding on to that. I'm a Toronto Raptor fan. I've seen that whole run in the flesh. I know how great Kawhi Leonard is,
Mhm.
but ever since he's gone to the Clippers, he hasn't eclipsed 60 games in the regular season.
Right.
Hasn't eclipsed 60. And that means something. We know his ability on the court. We know what he can provide. But if he can't be there for the biggest moments for the Clippers, I mean, the last time he was like he ended the series with the Clippers, they got freaking like this. They got embarrassed by the Denver Nuggets. They got embarrassed. They, exactly. So there has to be something put onto that. Like there has to be some sort of line that you have to draw for Kawhi Leonard. He has like this aura around him, especially with the year in Toronto. But we got to look at his Clippers tenure and chalk it up as nothing but a disappointment so far. Maybe this year he could turn around. Hopefully he can come back from what was it? Was it another ACL injury he had in the playoffs or some sort of like ACL MCL type sort of injury?
Mhm.
Hopefully he can bounce back from that. But is there any reason where you're gonna have any sort of hope for that? I don't. So
I mean,
I,
TV,
yeah.
this is a great way to phrase. I'll ask you it in the form of a question, and this might even clarify our point at putting him at number 4 even more. With the new readout for the CBA, one of the most important things that's been added as a big addition is the games required in order to be elected not only for NBA awards but also for All NBA. Do you believe, especially, and I guess it's easier to answer this when you use recent sample size, but when you consider this new rule change, is Kawhi Leonard an all-NBA caliber player? Now, again, I think talent-wise, Kawhi Leonard is an all-NBA caliber player.
Undoubtedly.
When you add in the fact that also now all-NBA has now become positionless, I think that also favors Kawhi Leonard as an all-NBA caliber player. The issue is that I have a worry that moving forward, if this precedent that's been set continues, Kawhi Leonard's days of being an all NBA player are over. Because if the new rule is to eclipse 65 games to at least be considered for all NBA, regardless of how talented we believe Kawhi Leonard is, this recent precedent has told us that if we went based off these new rules alone, Kawhi Leonard would not be an All NBA player, and that's the reality.
Yeah, no, that's a definitely good point to make. Ty Lue just recently went on, I think it was Matt Barnes' podcast, and he said that he like had conversation with Paul George and Kawhi. Look, we know about the load management, we know about the rest, but we need y'all on the court in the regular season. We can't be settling for like the 7-6 seed and hoping that we can just go all the way with the talent we got. Right. There's something to be said about having a top 4 seed, having home court advantage, having 50+ wins. There is a different aura to that, no matter the talent on your team. And I think if they can like maybe embrace that new way of thinking, Kawhi and Paul George, then they could still be considered all NBA talents, because you can make the same argument for Paul George, especially over the last couple of seasons where he's missed a lot of games. If that can change, they can still do it. But from what we've seen in their Clippers tenure so far, especially with Kawhi Leonard, he's not an all NBA player then, if this is going to be what the new standard is.
Yeah.
He's still a top 5 player. We're not going to remove him from that. We can't do that. But he is our number 4. Jay, moving on to number 3. Who do you got?
Number 3, I have Jimmy Butler. Still a little bit of Bulls bias here, but I also think that we just have to factor in that Jimmy Butler as a regular season performer, that is what limits him. At the end of the day, this is a guy that always going to be in position to, yes, step up when the postseason comes. He is also a guy that I feel like his play style comes and goes in a way that actually makes us wonder about where Jimmy Butler truly is in any part of a given season. There's sections of a season where we view him as extremely too passive. There's other parts of the season where we feel as though he could be a top 5 player in the entire NBA with the way that he's playing. That polarizing play style from one side to the other makes it so difficult to put him as a top 2 player in his position, because I feel as though you never know necessarily what kind of Jimmy Butler you're getting. And I feel like everybody relies on, but postseason Jimmy Butler is this. But the issue with that also is when we've seen Jimmy Butler flame out in the postseason, it's ugly. Like when he plays at the top, and you can say a similar thing about Giannis Antetokounmpo actually. But we're on the subject of Jimmy Butler at the moment. When Jimmy Butler is playing at a high level in the postseason, he is not just one of the. Jimmy Butler was walking away with like NBA playoffs MVP last postseason with the type of play that we saw. And that was while seeing what Jamal Murray did, seeing how insane Nikola Jokic's run was, seeing what it was that in the early stages of the postseason, Devin Booker was one of those guys that we had really high hopes for in terms of how he was performing in the postseason. But Jimmy Butler was the name that stood out above all of that for a majority of that run. That's how good Jimmy can be. There's also the other aspects of where when you see Jimmy and he's passive, playing slower, seems as though he doesn't have his legs underneath him, or it just seems as though he's deferring. Those are the times when you get to wonder what's going on with Jimmy. Why is this the way he's playing? What is it about this play style that he feels like is conducive to winning basketball on a team where we know that him playing at a high level is the most important way to leading the Miami Heat to playing championship caliber basketball? So I think the polarizing difference between Jimmy Butler's high of highs and his low of lows, it makes him so controversial as a player in these kind of rankings that I just have to kind of meet myself at the middle.
Yeah. I also have Jimmy Butler at 3.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, maybe we're not as confused about how we thought this was going to go as we thought.
Well, the thing is that you basically provided like that same argument I was really going to go for it. And we've seen it. Like we talk about it in the regular season. Jimmy Butler, we could tell he just doesn't care. He just does not care throughout the regular season, as seen as they lost to the Atlanta Hawks in the play-in game. We've seen him like just settle for the 8th seed. But when he turns it on, this guy looks like a top 2 player in the league. We know how good he can be. But we've also had conversation, is he a top 15 player in the regular season? He did not make an all-star team this year. Like, that has to mean something. That does mean something. And it's not like, and the thing is, I want to put him at number 2. I really did, especially with what a great playoffs he had. But I can't remove that like the last, couple series in my mind where Jimmy Butler was just, I know it might be because of the ankle injury. We know about the whole story and everything after going down against the Knicks. But man, like him being passive against the Denver Nuggets, letting, trying to get Bam way too involved, getting all these other guys involved, not really like making his stamp on the series. Until like, I remember like having those conversations. Like, remember we had like, it didn't wait until like the last like 5 minutes of game 5 or whatever.
Till Jimmy game 5,
like literally game 5 where he had to go like super crazy just to even give him a chance. We didn't see enough of that in that series. So as much as Jimmy Butler is great, I mean, this past season, 21 points per game as a regular season player, jumps up to like 26, 27 points per game in the playoffs. Those just sort of like numbers, as I know it's just points, but you could see the impact when it comes to him just being astronomically better in the playoffs. The question is the consistency. The question is, can he, like, he hasn't been able to show this on a regular basis. And again, I'm in the same boat with you. What makes him think that him playing like this is gonna like help the Miami Heat win? Sure, he wants to get the other guys involved, let them get their shots, but clearly them winning is predicated on Jimmy Butler being playoff Jimmy, and he just hasn't been doing that consistently enough. And I think that the Heat probably would have like had a much better series if Jimmy Butler had that same mentality for like he did in the final 5 minutes of Game 5, and he just wasn't able to do so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Now we're going to move into the top 2. And this is going to be interesting. Because I know we have 2 guys on this list that we haven't said yet, so I know they're going to be our top 2. Jay, who do you got at number 2?
I got LeBron James at number 2.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, then we have to find at the same time. Oh my goodness, man. We have the exact same list.
Hey, TV, look, first of all, everybody needs to understand 2 things. One, me and TV think very similarly. This is one of the funniest things about our podcast because I think whenever we try to turn it into a debate show, it's so difficult because me and you have such a similar philosophy in terms of how we view basketball. I think the other thing that's super important too is that me and TV have been giving each other takes on NBA for what, the better part of 3 years now?
Yeah.
So I can't even tell myself to try to be surprised when we subconsciously do this because I just feel as though we both understand the philosophy that we believe in when it comes to the game. And some of the most important things are availability, production in the regular season, productivity on the in the postseason, excuse me. And one of the most important things that I think we both value a ton is overall impact on team success. It's not just the ability to perform well, but it's the overall ability to perform in a team construct. We get to LeBron James, you cannot doubt what it is that LeBron James does. We also have to understand that LeBron James is one of these players that the system has to be built around. I think we need to get an understanding of that if we don't already. One of the most notable things every single season, book it, by about 2-3 weeks before the NBA trade deadline, the Lakers are the most talked about team in the league. And why is that? Because every single season, there's this idea that the Los Angeles Lakers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, whoever it is, needs to optimize their roster around the skill set of LeBron James. There's not necessarily a system in place because LeBron James is the system. Not only does that make him a top 2 player, I believe, but I also think that that's part of what makes him 2 and not 1 at this stage in his career. He is so dependent on the skill sets around him that in reverse, the skill sets around him also become so dependent on what it is that he does well. And so when you optimize a roster around a guy's skill set so much, When you have recent seasons like the last 2 or 3 that we've had where LeBron James is out, the team does not know how to function. So it's a double-edged sword because LeBron James is so effective at getting his teammates involved, bringing out the best in some of the guys that play alongside him. But because the team's skill sets are so oriented around what he does well, when he is out, that productivity diminishes significantly. Yes, you're losing a top 2 overall in NBA history talent. So of course there's going to be a drop off. But the difference between NBA caliber team and deserves to be in the lottery is insane when you
Yeah.
lose a guy like LeBron James for even 5 to 10 games at any given time.
Mhm.
So it sucks because LeBron James is so good at 38 years old. He's still a guy that can drop 25 plus a game. But he's a guy that the injury history is starting to become a big factor. His need for his role players to be much more effective is starting to heighten in ways that we did not necessarily believe in the past. He's become a guy that I think the ability of the role players has become a lot more important to him as
Yeah.
opposed to once upon a time where he as a singular talent could outweigh, I think, some of the guys that are around
Yes.
him. We've seen
Yes.
that sample size as well. He's outgrown those things. And so I think that he still deserves to be a top 3 small forward, but I think his dependency and in reverse, the interdependency of the roster around him, it's too much. It's too much. It's either you have one of the best groups in the NBA with LeBron James on the floor, or you have a top of the lottery caliber group when he's not there, and it's all predicated off not talent, but play style.
Yeah.
Play style being the biggest wild card, which is not you. That's not a unique thing, but it's not a consistent thing around the league. There's only a handful of guys that you run into the trouble of the team is worse, not because of the talent on the floor, but because of the way they play, depending on if their superstar is or is not on the floor.
100%. I mean, when you just look back to LeBron on the Miami Heat days, all you needed was him, 2 stars, and a bunch of other guys, and that was enough. But
Mm-hmm.
as the years start to go on, when he moved back to Cleveland, he needed to have you know a good set of supporting cast to even get himself back to the finals. A la the 2018 season where they had to make like 20 trades at the trade deadline just in order to make that team able to go into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now you look at the Los Angeles Lakers, and you could see it in his stats diminishing as well. He's just not the same guy. Sure, he's still like a top 10 NBA talent. It's still a top 10 NBA player, but he just needs so many things to go in his favor for that team to be successful. He needed this past season. He needed Rui Hachimura. He needed Austin Reeves to play a big part. He needed Anthony Davis to be healthy. He needed the play of D'Angelo Russell, other guys on the roster to step up, just so that they can edge their way into the conference finals. And the Lakers had to move mountains to try and just get those perfect guys in
Yeah.
order to give them a chance moving forward in the playoffs. Mind you, they were the 7th seed. We talked about in the past. They were the 13th seed a few weeks before the trade deadline, and they were able to move up because they finally found a formula to help get this team rolling. But we saw in the playoffs when he went up against Nikola Jokic in the Denver Nuggets, you have a team that's one has the MVP, has the back-to-back MVP prior to this season, with all his other guys just completely on the same page with the same chemistry. That just took this team apart. Absolutely took this team apart. Where in the past, the fiddle on LeBron, you needed it, but LeBron was sometimes too good that he could still be competitive in these type of series. He can't be anymore. He needs to have a certain set of players around him to be successful. And kudos to the Lakers for making it happen. They brought back all the guys they needed to bring back for this upcoming season. So LeBron's prime or his his days of still being one of the top players in the league may still continue, because not only do he has a similar cast last year coming into this season, he has a full off season of rest, and now he has the training camp to kind of work with these guys to even build that rapport, build that chemistry even higher. So yes, he could still be a top 5 a top talent in the NBA. But so much of the success of the Lakers, so much of the success of LeBron, like you mentioned, is up to the other guys playing their parts to a T. And that's just not the LeBron we're used to seeing. This is not the LeBron that freaking went to like what was it, like 8 or 9 straight NBA finals.
Mhm.
We don't have the LeBron anymore. And that's not to say he's a bad player, but that just means he's no longer the best small forward in the world. He's number 2 at this point. So we have to have him at number 2.
Yeah, and I would hope that most people don't believe that number 2 is a slight for a 38-year-old LeBron James who just took his team to the Western Conference Finals. Like, there's no disrespect, excuse me, or any kind of shade here in this. But I think we've come to the point, and it's okay. He's 38 years old. Like, I don't even think this is a crazy thing to say out loud. He's 38 years old. It's okay. But we're at the point in LeBron James's career where rosters need to be optimized in order for him to be successful long term. That is okay for a 38-year-old superstar caliber player to need the help now. I think it's okay that when we have, okay, sure, when you have the GOAT conversations and things like that, you're going to talk about things like the assistants he had around him, the ability to build super teams. Yeah, you're going to use those things. But on a season to season basis, if we're talking about the best players in the league, he is still one of the top players in the NBA. It's just that in order to go after winning championships, he needs much more around him in order to be successful in ways that we have not seen from him in the past, and in ways that certain superstars across the league are not nearly as dependent on. LeBron James, between his age, his recently accumulated, might I add, injury history, along with the fact that it seems like every single season they need a trade deadline shakeup in order to be able to reinvigorate and re-stimulate his focus into wanting to be able to play at a high level and push for the postseason, as opposed to getting away with coasting during the regular season the way he did in the Eastern Conference, for example, which is a whole different debate that we can get into at a separate time, of course. But in recent memory, he has not been able to coast during the regular season in ways he was once able to do. Pair that with the injury history and the accumulation of age, or the accumulation of injury history and his age, he just needs more. And that's okay. That is totally okay for him to still be a championship caliber player, because guess what? At the end of the day, even with those requirements, I can still say that LeBron James is a 1A or 1B on a championship caliber season. I mean, a champion caliber team any season so far that he's walked in throughout this entire time frame, and that includes the season we're about to go into.
100%. He is. I mean, I can't believe we have to freaking defend this, but he is
Right.
top 2 point small forward in the league. But he is just that good still. It's just he just needs a bit more support, and that is completely fine. He's shown us enough in his career that he is able to do a carry job. Now he just needs a bit more support, and even with that, he is still a top 2 small forward in the league. So that is great on him. But that means that number 1 is Jason Tatum, and I'm going to start off here with JT. Jason Tatum's game every season feels like he's just adding a new dimension to it every single year. And not only is that correlating with like regular season success, he's made the last 4 All-Star teams, he's become a 3-time All-NBA player at this point, but that is also moving along with the playoff success that his team is having, making it to the NBA Finals, going to the conference finals this year with the Boston Celtics. He has shown that he has just kind of that killer instinct when it comes to late game situations and just getting into the game, where you can like be comfortable with any shot that Jason Tatum is taking. We talked this about Devin Booker in the past. We talked about this with maybe in the past with like Kevin Durant. Like, he is getting to that point where you're comfortable with him making the right decision and getting the shot off just because he is that great of a scorer, that great of an offensive threat. And not only is he a great offensive threat, this guy, he's using his strength. He's building on his strength. He's using his body build to his advantage on the defensive end. His perimeter defense has improved leaps and bounds since his rookie season, and he's becoming what some people say is one of the defensive anchors for this Boston Celtics team, just because he's not afraid to take on the best player. He's not afraid to take on some of the best perimeter players in the league, and he has shown that he can step up to them, especially on a defensive level. And with Jason Tatum, I hate to take a shot at Kawhi here, but he's available. This guy is available. He's played 76, 74 games over the last 2 seasons, respectively, and he has just shown that that he can provide massive numbers in the regular season, having a career last year averaging 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's only 25 years old. He's just going to continue to get better. The Celtics team is just optimized around him very well, and you just know that. Sure, the Boston Celtics system gets a little bit like weary at the end because it just becomes a back and forth between him and Jaylen Brown who takes a shot near the end. But at the end of the day, I think they still got time to figure that out. Jason Tatum is becoming a better passer, and I think that's something he's going to add to his game, knowing like his work ethic and his progression throughout his career. He's just going to keep adding that to his game. He's only going to continue to get better, and he's shown that he has that the killer instinct in late game situations in the playoffs, showing that he can provide a great production in both parts of the season. He is my number one small forward in the league.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back and use what the litmus test that we did with Kawhi Leonard in terms of the 65 game All NBA threshold. Of this entire group, even including both of our honorable mentions, Jason Tatum would be the most likely to make an All NBA team. He'd be the most likely to make an All NBA team, and he'd probably be the most likely to be first team All NBA of this group. Yeah. That alone is significant when you talk about not just the ability on the floor, but the availability as well. I think maybe from an availability standpoint, ironically enough, I think DeMar DeRozan might be the second best guy on this list if we're talking about the ability to stay on the floor as well. So Jason and I, just based off our list alone, the talent gap between Jason Tatum and DeMar DeRozan is relatively distant. So factor in the fact that, like you mentioned beforehand, he has improved every single season. The team success that has come with his ascension year after year, multiple Eastern Conference Finals appearances, and a recent NBA Finals appearance, the ability to produce in the postseason every single year, the ability to make the postseason every single year since being drafted. These are things that are super important when you talk about the rise of an NBA superstar and who's going to be the next guy or who is going to be the next group of dudes that take over this next generation of the league. Jason Tatum has had one of the most gradual ascensions that we've seen in NBA history, and he continues to elevate himself. And I think that if he continues to grow as a good decision maker with the basketball, not just in terms of his own shot chart, but in terms of getting others involved, I think if Jason Tatum grows as a decision maker and a passer more over the coming seasons, as we've slowly seen him built on so far, he's only going to become that much better of a player, because offensively, there's not too many people that can mess with Jason Tatum in isolation. Yeah. He's one of the better two-way defenders that can switch between 1, 2, 3. He's played the 4 for the Celtics in recent memory as well. So he's got legitimate size and switchability, which makes him portable. It makes him a guy where if he weren't on the Boston Celtics, he could still be an effective top 1, top 2 option on any given team in the NBA, because he has the portability to step in and be a big-time wing defender, a big-time mid-range shooter, an ability to hit three-point corner shots at any time. He has a lot of flexibility within his game, and his continuing improvement only makes him much more dangerous as a threat long term. Jason Tatum over LeBron James should not be sacrilegious at this stage in their careers. Hopefully it's viewed that way, but honestly, I don't care, because I think at the end of the day, Jason Tatum has just officially put himself in that pocket.
Yeah, 100%. I just love seeing just every single year the way that he progresses, and I have like no doubt in my mind that he's going to continue to do that every single year moving forward. I forgot which podcast I heard this from, but they called him 10-time Tatum at like the second year after the second season of his career. He's going to reach 10-time All-Star. He's going to be considered one of the great small forwards of this era, and he's only going to continue to get better. We both have him at our number 1. Once again, very similar list from me and Jay over here, but like he mentioned earlier, our mindset, we're just there. We're just there right now. Yeah, man. And next week when we go to power forwards, we already talked about it a little bit. It's going to be very interesting, but we're going to have to wait and see till then. Let us know down below what you thought of this list. If we're missing anyone, provide your reasonings down below. We are moving into the final portion of this podcast, which means it's time for the NBA draft, which means it's also time for the NBA quiz. And of course, we're going to start off with the NBA draft. And today's theme is we're looking overseas. I was looking through possible draft topics for this week, and I came upon a ranker list of the of NBA players who have played overseas. And Jay, you've seen this list too. I didn't know a lot of these guys play overseas, and I was like really surprised to see like the amount of names on this list.
Yeah, this list is way more dense than I anticipated, and I think that makes things a little bit more interesting. The only part that is also worth considering is that we have to take into account, are we getting whatever version of them played overseas,
Oh
or are
no,
we getting the all-time version?
let's get the all-time versions.
All right.
I don't think we want 40-year-old Magic Johnson in the Swedish league.
Yeah, man. That's why. See, you got to keep tabs on these things, because the slick part you mentioned, for example, Magic Johnson playing in the Swedish league, you still get the all-time version of that player. That's an insane pool when you think about the fact that this list, like I said, that's just one random name that most people might have not known played overseas. Imagine the group, the different group of people that are on this list. There's a lot of interesting names on here.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if we did go with like their international versions themselves. I mean, the top two picks is going to be Stephon Marbury and Jimmer Fredette. So, so we're gonna move past that.
Oh man.
So we're gonna move past that. Whoever played overseas, we're gonna get the best version of them for this draft. Of course, we're gonna go serpentine. Jay gets the first overall pick. I get the next two. He gets the next two. So on and so forth. And look, we mentioned beforehand, there might be some guys on this list who have played overseas but have not made the list. So if you can remember those guys too and you want to add them on, you can add them there too. So Jay, first pick, who do you got?
All right, man. Going with the current player, we're gonna get the Slovenian out the way. Let me get Luka Doncic right now. Let me just get him out the way.
Yeah, Luka Doncic. Look, I mean, we talked about I joked around with Stephon Marbury and Jimmy Fredette being the top two picks, but this man was a legit EuroLeague MVP in his teenage years. That is saying something. Luka Doncic, whether you pick freaking the Euro version of him or the Dallas Mavericks version of him, I don't think you can go wrong with that. That is a fantastic first overall pick. I think that only means I got to go Magic. I got to go Magic with my first pick. That is completely fine. He's going to be my point guard. But next to Magic Johnson, there's a lot of great talent here. I mean, there's a lot of guys that, honestly, we wouldn't usually pick in an all-time draft, but there's a lot of guys to really consider, which is going to be really, really fun for this. I think for my next overall pick, I see a very lack of, wing players here. So give me Scottie Pippen, who played for two teams overseas, the Torpan Pozhat and the Suns Vol Dragons. Did not know he played for any of those teams, but give me Scottie Pippen. Prime Scottie Pippen to add to this team. Great addition.
Scottie Pippen is a pool, man. That is definitely a pool, man. All right. For my first pick, we're going to go from new school to old school, and I'm going deep in the vault. This is one of my favorite players, one of the original stretch fours. Played for the Shaanxi Brave Dragons. Give me Bob McAdoo at my 4.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Chicago Bull, I think he played for the Bulls a bit, or no? I think it was the Clippers.
I think it was the Clippers.
Clippers, got you.
And then next to that, I'm going to put Bob at the 4. And we're going to have some insane two-man action going, because I'm going to get my center out the way. I don't know how much defense we're playing, but guess what? We're playing Euro basketball. It's about to be very fast, up-tempo. Give me Arvydas Sabonis at the 5.
That is a pull right there. And to be honest, his best version of himself was overseas. Because of the whole war that was happening in the 90s, the Cold War or something, he couldn't come over to the U.S.
Come over early, yep.
Yeah, so getting the best version of Arvydas Sabonis, you got like a Nikola Jokic-esque type player there. So that is a damn good pull. Arvydas Sabonis at your center position. Okay, I give the next two picks. You know what? I'm gonna go with this guy. We were talking about whether this guy either played for China or not. I searched it up. He played for Turkey. He played in Turkey at the end of his career. I'm gonna go with. I need a shot creator over here. I got two guys that like to pass a lot. Give me the ultimate shot creator, Allen Iverson at the 2.
That's a good pull.
Allen Iverson over there. He ended up playing for Besiktas in Turkey. So that's how he ended his career. And now for my other position, there's a lot of good ones here. You know what, man? We talked about some guys who didn't make this list. I'm gonna make a poll right here. Give me Taiwanese legend Dwight
Oh no.
Howard. Taiwanese legend Dwight Howard. This guy, after every playoff elimination, yo, LeBron, come over to Taiwan. We'll give you everything over here. This man is gonna be anchoring my defense at the center position. Give me Dwight Howard.
Oh man, that's oh man, that's really good. That's really good. Dwight Howard, and you're right. That was a guy we talked about on the list that wasn't on the list. That's a really. Ooh. Did I take my big man too early? I'm a little worried now because you reminded me that by taking him, that reminds me of somebody else that would have been really dope to take right now. Mm. I'm gonna stick with what I got going on though. At my 3, you took Scottie Pippen. I need some defense, but I think there's a lot of versatility here. I'm going to go deep in the vault. He was at 47 on this list. Give me Ron Artest, a.k.a. Meta World Peace.
Damn. You got a tone center over there with Ron Artest.
I'm going to put him at my 3. Shout out Arvydas Sabonis out of Lithuania. I'm going to grab the Lithuanian demon. Let me get LaMelo Ball for my 2.
He played in Australia. No, did he play Lithuania? Oh, yeah, he did play.
He played in Lithuania first, and then he played in Australia.
Yeah, you're right. Oh,
so let me get LaMelo Ball at the 2 in the back.
That is a pull right there. I absolutely love that pick. LaMelo Ball. I honestly, I completely forgot he did play for Lithuania for a bit. And he had those games, like, you could watch those games on Facebook Live or something like that. I remember those days, man. LaMelo Ball, that's a fantastic final pick. For me, I need a 4. I think I'm looking for.
You got a couple 4s, TV. You got a couple 4s.
The thing is, do I want to go basic or do I want to go fun? I'm going to go fun. We're going to go to the land of Christianity. We're going to go to Jerusalem. We're going to take Amari Stoudemire. Amari Stoudemire.
The Jerusalem pick. Oh, man. Let him bless your squad real quick.
Amari Stoudemire. I was gonna go Pau Gasol.
Okay, that was what I thought. That's what I thought the basic pick was too. Pau Gasol would have been a good one.
Yeah, but I wanted to have let's look at the Steve have some highlights. Amari Stoudemire, prime stat man. Prime stat was a joy to watch in this league and one of the most athletic bigs that we've had in NBA history. Give me Amari Stoudemire at my 4. I can't believe he played for the Jerusalem team, bro. These guys at the end of the day, they just want to play ball, man. They just want to play ball. They want to get paid. These guys end up in the craziest places. Jay, to end this off, tell me your lineup for your all-time lineup for players that played overseas, I guess. Go.
All right. So at the 1, I'm gonna do Luka Doncic. At the 2, I'm gonna put LaMelo Ball there. I'm gonna have Ron Artest, aka Meta World Peace, at the 3, Bob McAdoo at the 4, and Arvydas Sabonis at the 5.
Very, very nice lineup. At my 1, I'm going to go with Magic Johnson. At my 2, Allen Iverson. At my 3, Scottie Pippen. At my 4, Amari Stoudemire. And at my 5, Mr. Taiwan, Dwight Howard. Man, I mean, to be honest, even looking at this list, there's so many guys that we missed out on. None of us took Dominique Wilkins. None of us took low-key underrated baller from the 90s, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Yeah.
English. Man, there's some good players. Even
Dennis Rodman is even here. Dennis Rodman is even on here.
Yeah, that is crazy. There's a lot of good players on this list. Freaking Darren Williams played in the same team that Allen Iverson did, and Besiktas too, which is crazy. But yeah, those are our teams. Let us know who had the better draft down below, and if you could have drafted a better team than us, also let us know down below. Jay, final topic of the show, and like we mentioned, we are going to try to go through all 30 teams of this. Maybe not on the pod, but we're going to try to make this a little series. We did the Raptors. We did the Chicago Bulls. But today, we're continuing on the series. Me versus Jay. Jay has a 2-0 lead right now. We are going to be randomizing a team and trying to go back and forth to see if we can name as many players from that franchise as much as possible. Again, the bogey card is in play. We're going to write down one player to see if we can catch someone out with that. Other rules, you can't repeat what the other person said, and you can't repeat a name that you said already. But you might be asking, TV, how are we going to determine this week's team? Well, the the YouTube watchers are gonna have a treat today because we're gonna be sharing. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this right now. Can I do it? Or is it like, or Skype is bugging? I think Skype is bugging. It's fine. Is it? Yeah, no, Skype is bugging a bit. But I'm going to be, and Jay, you can take my word for it. I'm going to be spinning a wheel.
Oh, no, I can see your screen.
You can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, awesome.
Cursor right now, right?
Yeah. All right. Okay. We're going to spin the wheel, and we're going to see what team we get to choose. The wheel is spinning.
Oh, I can't see the wheel. I can see your screen, but I can't see the wheel.
Oh, man. Let's see. Jay, we got the Detroit Pistons. We got the Detroit Pistons. All right. Let's give ourselves like 30 seconds. We're going to think of a bogey player.
All right. Let me see. I want to pick an obscure name.
I gotta think of something. Ooh, this is tough. Got one.
Got him. Yep, got him.
All right. We have our names on the list. Detroit Pistons players all time. Jay, roll with the first one.
Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Very nice. Carlos Delfino.
Ooh, I remember him more for the Bucks. That's a good pull, though. Vinny the Microwave Johnson.
Very nice. This has me scared, bro. This has me scared. I'm gonna go with Rodney Stuckey.
Wow, that's a good one. Rodney Stuckey. Let's play safe. Reggie Jackson.
Okay. Will Bynum.
Dang, I was gonna use him later. Cheat code. AI.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the AI. Good
Yeah.
pick. Go pull. I'm gonna go with Tayshaun Prince.
That's a good one. Jerry Stackhouse.
Very nice. I'm gonna go basic as hell. Isaiah Thomas.
Okay, still safe. Former Chicago Bull Lindsey Hunter.
Ooh, that is a pull right there. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, Lindsey Hunter. Who do I? There's so. You know what? F it. Andre Drummond.
Okay, that's a good save. John Sally.
John Sally, like that. Adrian Dantley.
Took one of my next ones.
What's good about is like saying someone who didn't play for the Pistons. You might have like.
Yeah, I know. Let's go safe again. I'm gonna go with Cade.
Cade, got you.
Go safe again.
I'm gonna go safe. Isaiah Stewart.
That's a good one. That's a good pull. Again, I think I might just start going into safe mode. Let's go Mark Aguirre.
Mark Aguirre, got you. I'm gonna go with Joe Dumars.
That's a good one. If you know Tobias Harris.
Yes, got
Dang it!
Yes, sir.
Oh,
let's get it.
You know gave it away. Oh, that's brutal.
Let's go Tobias Harris.
Like he knows, duh. Like, oh my gosh.
Tobias Harris. I was like, you know what? Gonna go not too far back. I already learned my lesson from, what was it? I think it was like Barbosa or whatever. Gotta go a bit more. Give me Tobias Harris. Let's go. Finally got a win in this series. Who was your bogey player?
My bogey player was Rasheed Wallace.
I thought that was stupid. Yo, that was one of my safe picks. What?
Yes. See, I was in there. See, bro, because Rasheed Wallace, because the two places I was gonna pick from was the championship teams, and I was gonna pick the championship teams in the early 80s. I mean, or in the early 90s, excuse me. And then the 2004 team.
Yeah.
Basically, I was trying to bounce between those two, and Rasheed Wallace was just like one of my more notable players.
Yeah.
So I went with him because I thought he was obscure enough, but not too far back.
Yeah.
Rodney Stuckey was a pull though. Holy.
I was, for some reason, I was scared to say Greg Monroe. I
You
was
would have been safe, but he would have been a good pick. I was going through now that I'm going through the list, Tracy McGrady was here.
no,
Antonio
that's
McDyess
the
was
scariest
here.
name to me. Tracy McGrady was the scariest name because he's like niche enough, like he's such a known player, but knowing
The Pistons will fly over your head if you're not paying attention.
yeah,
If you don't know the Pistons thing, that'll fly over your head. I'm surprised. We the game finished before we got to Blake Griffin. We
okay,
didn't say Greg Monroe,
Bogdanovich,
Bogdanovich, Bob McAdoo, who was on my drafted team,
yeah,
played for the Pistons as well. There was
yeah,
still like a decent amount of guys before it could have got sticky. We
yeah.
didn't do Chauncey Billups or Richard Hamilton either.
Honestly,
So
luckily for, I mean, I went like one person from that team, and I went with Tayshaun, so that was
yeah,
that was a pull right there. But man, I was scared of like there's so many like players that you can like kind of be niche with. Like for me, it was between Toby and Bobby. For me, it was like
that's good. That's good.
it was either Toby and Bobby for me. So you know what? I'll take this win. It's a 2-1 series. You still got the lead, but I'm finally on the board. Let's get it. We might not be doing these on the pod anymore, but fear not. We're gonna be having some TikTok videos up pretty soon. We're planning to do some like TikTok recording sessions, so you're gonna see a lot more of these on the social medias. So be on the lookout for that. But man, Jay, we reached another end of another fantastic episode. Thank you all for watching. What do you have to say to these beautiful people before we head out?
We're having fun over here at the podcast. You guys can't tell. This is where stuff's getting interesting. Now, you saw me and TV go to bat with our two favorite teams in the league. You saw things got cut a little short on this Detroit Pistons thing, but I think that also goes to show you we are studying. We're studying, but we're also getting used to the way me and TV think about things. Our bogey players, we're starting to adjust our parameters a little bit, and that's gonna make the game even more fun. And I think something that was also cool is this randomized aspect of it too. So like TV said beforehand, probably I don't want to say we're not going to do this on the podcast anymore, but you're definitely going to see a lot more of this on the social medias in the more recent future. And we're going to have a ton of fun with it. And there's going to be a lot of other teams. The Detroit Pistons are now another team off the list, along with the Bulls and the Raptors. It's only going to get more fun from there. And definitely let us know in the comment section other potential games we can play. With these quizzes, I actually almost have more fun kind of going against TV. It makes us both think, and it's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I mean, of course, we don't want to keep doing the same quiz over and over again. We will throw these in like maybe every once in a while, but man, you're gonna see a lot more of these on the TikToks and Instagram. So make sure you're following Hit Your Free Throws there, and you get to see more of these fun type of quizzes. But we have reached the end of an episode. Thank you all for watching. Remember to show love on the YouTube, like, share, subscribe. Show love on the podcast networks. Make sure you leave a review. That would be highly appreciated. Follow our personals, which is down below, and also just follow Hit Your Free Throws on the social media networks. Like I mentioned, the best WNBA content, and nowadays it's 100% daily. So make sure that you go over there and check that out. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend. This is TV. That's Jay signing out. Take it easy, guys. Peace.